You've probably heard of Which Magazine, our home of hard-hitting journalism and informative stories delivered directly to our members. There's our travel, money and tech mags too. But did you know you can hear some of our best articles for free, available to listen to whenever you like? Each week on the Which Shorts podcast, we bring you a specially selected story, lovingly voiced and produced especially for you on a whole range of fascinating topics. Just search Which Shorts wherever you're listening.
When life gives you questions, Which? Get answers.
Welcome to the Which Money Podcast, your weekly hit of money news and personal finance hacks to help make you better off. I'm your host, Lucia Ariano, and here's what's coming up this week.
I think there are a number of things out there that run into this. The cost of living crisis has definitely fueled the growth of some of these sites because we're all looking to find a better and cheaper way to buy things because money's tighter.
But our research has found that unfortunately scams are appearing on these platforms. So we found that a third of buyers and a fifth of sellers said that they'd experienced a scam using a secondhand marketplace.
This week on the podcast, we're talking about the rise of second-hand online marketplaces, who's using them, how to use them, and what they're doing to the world of retail. We'll also hear what customers have told Which about the best and worst online marketplaces, and even what they might mean for your tax bill. And to help with this and so much more, I'm joined by Gurpreet Choker, one of our legal experts here at Which, and Catherine Shuttleworth, the founder of Savvy Marketing. Hello both.
Hello.
Hello.
Thank you both so much for joining us. Well, let's start with the basics. When we say online marketplaces, what do we mean?
Places like Vinted and Depop and eBay and Gumtree and Facebook. Places where we can go as consumers and sell things that we've either had enough of or we don't want anymore to other people, and it's a kind of peer-to-peer selling site.
And what kind of thing can you buy on them? Or maybe is the question, what can't you buy on them?
Yeah, probably. Well, I don't think you can probably buy live animals, but I'm sure I can be proven wrong. As soon as I say that, somebody will say, yes, you can. I mean, the majority of people sell clothes, books, toys, that kind of thing, but people buy and sell cars on them. From the tiniest thing, antiques, jewellery, furniture, you name it. Basically, most things can be sold on these sites. And increasingly, we see now on TikTok Shop as well, people are using it as a way to sell food and drink. I mean, that's unusual, but it's something that will continue and start to happen and grow. But broadly, virtually anything is the answer to your question.
And we spoke about some of the ones you've already flagged, so Vinted and Depop, last week when we were talking about charity shops on the Money Podcast. And I should say, do go back and have a listen to that if you're into charity shopping and donating. But back to today, so the likes of Vinted and Depop and all of the others, how are these changing the retail landscape, Catherine?
Well, I think the whole retail landscape's changing. So what we want as consumers is changing. So we know that 85% of people would like brands to make it more easy for them to buy sustainable products. And what these platforms do is it creates a way for us to buy and sell things that have either been pre-loved, pre-used, they might even be never used, brand new with tags, for example, and they change the way that we shop. And that's because people are looking for more sustainable ways to shop. And the impact on retail is that people are buying a bit less stuff. How many times do you hear people say, I've just got enough stuff, I've got too much stuff? People are buying less stuff, and that does have an impact on the retail business. But I think, what is important to remember when we're talking about this market is growing, and it's growing really, really quickly. But it's still a tiny, tiny part of the whole retail market in the world.
And what about from the side of the seller? Is it something that's easy enough to do? So, if you're clearing out your wardrobe, could you be making money out of your old clothes, for not too much effort?
Oh, yeah. So it's so simple. Some of the marketplaces are easier than others, but honestly, it's really straightforward. So, with Vinted, for example, which is the one that's grown huge over the last few years in Europe, particularly, you can put your products up by using your smartphone, take a quick picture of them, set up an account, load up those products. Somebody says they want to buy them, and it's up to the buyer to pay for the cost of that thing being delivered to them. So it's a very simple way for you to start making money really quickly out of your used goods. Different platforms work in different ways. But, Facebook Marketplace could not be easier. If you've got a Facebook account, you just click on the little marketplace shop, put your items on, describe them. They even have a drop-down menu for you to do that. You can work out the pricing. This is such a simple way of making money really, really quickly with very little fuss. And of course, these marketplaces are designed in such a way that the user experience is super, super simple.
Well, as you say, Catherine, there are many of these out there and they do work in different ways. Gurpreet, I'm going to bring you in now. So we've been ranking the different apps in our latest research at Which. What have we found?
We surveyed more than 1,000 secondhand marketplace buyers and then 1,000 sellers to find out their favourite places to buy and sell secondhand goods. What we found was that Vinted was the most highly rated amongst our buyers and sellers. Specifically, so our Which buying and seller surveys, they had 17 ratings across them. So Vinted scored 4 out of 5 stars across 14 of these. So that's pretty impressive. Wow. And the ratings sort of included things like the ease of using the app and searching, the communications between buyer and seller, payment options available, delivery options. So a whole range of things. What we also found was that no particular marketplace was low scoring from the buying side of things. But on our seller survey, we found that Nextdoor, Shpock and Depop had all lower scores, all received around 3 stars for most of the categories. So there's room for improvement there. Catherine, I have to say, when you're speaking about the ease of using these apps, like I'm on the sort of selling unwanted item side of things, and it is so good and it's very easy to put things up, and when you make that first sale, it's so exciting, honestly. I've sort of collected a pot where I've made online sales, and then it just feels so good to know sometimes where you have certain items, you know who you're selling them to. There's a bit of a story there. So that's definitely one of my sort of reasons why I use the platforms.
Community around some of these platforms, isn't there, in a way that perhaps we haven't seen before. So when I talk to people who use them and talk to consumers, one of the things they like about some of them, and particularly you say Vinted scores very highly, is that Vinted feels like a real community of people and they're trying to help you by buying these things. I think it's unsurprising that sellers have a slightly lower view, because if you're trying to sell me a jacket for £15 and I make you an offer of 10 and reluctantly you accept it, you're always going to feel slightly disappointed. I didn't value the item at the same price. So I think that's an interesting area of these marketplaces. But I think there is this thing about, when you go on some of them, you can choose. So let's say, for example, you want to buy a pre-owned or pre-loved Oliver Bonus stuff, yeah? You will meet other people who are looking for the same things, and you'll see a story saying, my sister, I saw one yesterday, is looking for this jacket. Has anybody got it? And a story starts to develop about these products. So it's much more, it's not just transactional, as these sites used to be. There's a warmth, a community, and a different feeling about it, isn't there? As you're saying, as you love the thrill of selling, and there's the thrill of the chase of finding the thing you've been looking for. So I think that depth that is going into in terms of our personal psyche is really interesting.
That's a really nice point, and actually not something I'd really thought about. I'm quite new to this kind of new wave of these secondhand marketplaces. As I mentioned earlier, I've been using Gumtree for a long time. Maybe I'm kind of stuck in that era a little bit, and I still use it actually. I didn't really realise it was so much about the community aspect, and because you can follow people and like certain listings, can't you?
Yeah, you can. And so you'll suddenly find people who like similar things to you. You thought you were the only person who liked pink furry boots, and it turns out there are loads of people who like pink furry boots. And I think there is something that will grow about creating communities of like-minded people. I mean, a site that I use in this kind of space that I use a lot is Twickets. I used to do that on Gumtree. I'd buy concert tickets through there, and I might, as you know now, trying to book a concert ticket, you have to book it a year or so ahead. And then, of course, the evening you're going to go, something else happens. And I've had lovely messages from people saying, have a fantastic time. We're really sorry we can't go. We've got to go to parents' evening or whatever the reason is. And it's a really nice feeling that somehow you're busting the system, aren't you? You're busting the corporate system in this. You're helping one another with something you really like. And I think that's the very interesting thing about these platforms, that we're sort of helping each other and we're finding a different way. But having said all of that, there are now people who are running these on these platforms as businesses standalone. So they'll be buying from us. So on your Vinted site, if your pricing's really, a bit lower, I might be able to think, well, I can sell that better at a higher price, and I might start buying from you and selling it on again. So there's a resale on the resale, and that's quite interesting too.
It kind of feels a bit wrong in a way. We've just been talking about the community element, and now we're bringing this resale aspect. So I don't know, it kind of doesn't sit well with me. Do you know what I mean?
I suppose, but then you think, well, good luck to you. I've got rid of it. That's the other thing, isn't it? If you're selling something because you think, well, the worst thing is, isn't it? We've all done this. You go and buy something, particularly a clothing item, or you order it online. You try it on, you've decided it's not for you or it's the wrong size, and you promise yourself that you will send it back. And then the days pass and you don't send it back. And so I think...
You've got 28 days if you bought online, we should mention that.
Yeah, if you've got bought online, 28 days, yeah. But life is busy, isn't it? And sometimes we forget to do it. And so that chance to then sell it and get something back and just lose it is really positive. So I think there can be a win-win on both sides. But I've noticed myself this year a huge change in the kind of people that are using these sites. So a lot of the clothing sites before were used by younger shoppers. But, I've had people, I had somebody really recently, I've got teenage daughters, and they asked me about where I get prom dresses from. And I said the best place to go for prom dresses is Vinted, because you tend to wear a prom dress once, don't you? So it's very interesting that the change of people who are using them. And I talked to people in the office today. I was amazed how many people are using these sites very, very regularly.
And I wanted to ask you, Catherine, I feel like we've kind of answered this quite well already, but, generally speaking, it's all been very positive. And I was going to ask, why are people feeling so positive about these apps? But I think the only thing I wanted to ask, in addition to what we've covered, is the cost. Are people doing it because they want to find a bargain? Is that generally what you'll find, or maybe, not necessarily?
Yeah, I think there are a number of things out there that run into this. The cost of living crisis has definitely fueled the growth of some of these sites, because we're all looking to find a better and cheaper way to buy things because money's tighter. But I do think sustainability, is something that we're all really massively reconsidering, no matter who we are, how much money we earn, how old we are, where we live. And, I just as a stat, I was looking today, we talk to 1,000 shoppers every month. 69% of people have said, I have actively reduced the amount of new clothes I buy.
I'm one of those.
That's a massive, and you probably say, well, that's me, and that's me. And there's a catch-22 here. One is I go shop something, well, I'm not going to spend all that money on that. And the second is I feel I should be doing something better for the world. So, but it's broader than just clothing, isn't it? So it's that whole thing about, why would I pay more if I didn't have to? And I think that's a big mentality. Why would I pay more if I didn't have to?
Well, it has all been very positive so far, but after the break, we'll be back with how to make sure you don't get ripped off and what to do if something goes wrong.
2023 was momentous in the fight against fraud. It saw the passing of the Online Safety Act and the Financial Services and Markets Act. Both of these happening after years of exhaustive campaigning from us here at Which. But the battle against scams is far from over. Stay in the know and avoid falling victim to scammers by joining over 450,000 others who have signed up to our Which Scam Alerts. To sign up, head to which.co.uk/scamalert today.
Welcome back. Well, Gurpreet, lots of people, as we say, are now using these apps, but can we kind of take off the rose-tinted glasses? Can they be risky?
Catherine, you've said so many wonderful things about using these apps, so that, sense of community and, sustainability and, having different audiences engage with this way of buying as well. But our research has found that unfortunately scams are appearing on these platforms. So we found that a third of buyers and a fifth of sellers said that they'd experienced a scam using a secondhand marketplace. Now, that was during a 2-year period that we looked at. So I think it's really important to remember that, when you're shopping online, keep your wits about you. And if a deal looks like it's too good to be true, then it probably is. So go with your gut instinct then.
I think the other thing, that's right. And I think with scale, as these platforms get bigger, more scams will, by their very nature, start to happen, because people will see this as a way for them to either sell fakes or to get money through the wrong means. And I think the really important part about this is being really careful when you're on these sites, just as you would be if you were going into a shop, just if you would be if you were going to shop online. And keep, as you say, keep your wits about you. You're absolutely right. But I think there's also this thing about the people who run these sites have to absolutely invest very heavily in the best possible tech, that as soon as something happens, they can react to it in either a positive or a negative way. And I think what will happen is the sites that do that the best are the ones that will grow quickest and will have the better customer base for it.
And can we just rewind a bit then? What are some of the biggest scams doing the rounds at the moment?
Fakes are a big one. So fake goods, things not as described. So, I say this is a white shirt, brand new. And when I get it, actually, it's not brand new at all. It's not from the retailer I said it was from. That's a big one. The other one is stuff not appearing, but you've paid. You've paid for the item, but it never appears. And the seller says, yes, I've sent it, but you've never seen it. Or the other side of it is the person, which is a bigger one, is the person says they haven't received it when they have. So you send out your item, but it never gets received, allegedly, and so you don't get paid for your item. And I don't know about what else Which has found in some of these scams, but they're some of the ones I've heard a lot of.
I think it's sort of the similar types of things that you've just mentioned there. Other one where you've got empty packages appearing, and I'm not sure whether that's just sort of to go through the motions that something's being shipped, so that's quite an interesting one as well.
Are there certain things that we should kind of avoid looking for on these sites, or just be extra cautious with? To my mind, I'm just thinking tickets, gig tickets, theatre tickets, football tickets. I just feel like that it's just such a rife area where scams are.
Yeah, I want to say that, where you've got items of significant value and you can't necessarily inspect them. So you have to make sure that you're really happy with the purchase. So I'm thinking about designer goods. There are some online marketplaces, for example, Gumtree, where you can buy secondhand cars. And I would always say, you go and inspect that car in person, because you are able to do that. It's a big purchase and there's lots of consequences if your car's not working right. So I think it depends on the product and whether you're able to physically go and inspect it. Some platforms that's probably possible depending on the item, and some platforms it's just a case of you've seen it listed and you have to do some research around the listing, the person who's got the reviews on there. And, sometimes it is, taking a punt, but, and you can have an informed assessment of it as well.
Yeah, I think that's true, isn't it? Be as informed as you can be. Be careful about reviews, because, of course, you can write reviews about yourself. I think the things you should be really careful are big ticket items. Would you really spend £5,000 without looking at something? I don't think so. So, you risk buying something for £5 versus 5,000. If you were doing that in a shop, you would take an interest. You would ask further questions. You should be doing exactly the same on these sites. Tickets, I think, are safe if you go to the right sites that have got all of the right technology that protects you and work with you on that. So, some of them are really good, but again, be careful where you buy them from and read the T's and C's. Always read the T's and C's and make sure that you're going in with your eyes wide open. One of the things about these platforms, it is super simple to set up an account. And what people do is they set those accounts up and then they scroll down on their phones, probably, all guilty of it at some time. And at the end, it says, have you read the terms and conditions? And you just tick it anyway. A lot of the issues are inside those terms and conditions. So I think if you're parting with money, it's always really wise to make sure you've read the terms and conditions first, and then you're going into it in a sensible way,
Oh, and I should mention here that the latest episode on our sister podcast, Get Answers, was all about ticket resales and ticket scams. So do go back and have a listen to that if you haven't already. Now, Gepri, I think you have some more to add here on, checking the T's and C's and other ways that we can keep ourselves safe using these sites. Do you want to tell us more?
Yeah, sure. So where possible, try to pay with a debit card or credit card. Now, if you're purchasing online, PayPal has a Bioprotection that covers most purchases. But if you are paying family and friends, then you won't be covered. I think that's worth pointing out. And as Catherine was saying, that every marketplace is going to have different T's and C's, and they will have different ways in which they deal with complaints. So try to understand where you stand and what you'd need to do if you find yourself in that situation. Also, it's worth seeing if they give you a reasonable length of time to actually inspect the product or to check that it's fit for purpose. That's really important, obviously, if you've spent a significant amount of money on an item as well. And I'd say both buyers and sellers, as we've discussed, can be scammers. So stay vigilant. Do that due diligence that we've discussed. Check the profiles and the reviews. Take photos of what you send and receive. And also, keep those shipping notifications and make sure that you report it straight away. And if you do fall victim to a scam, which I hope that's not the case, then make sure that you tell your bank straight away, as they might be able to help you recover your money back. That's really important. Also tell the second-hand online marketplace. And then there are organisations like Action Fraud and Police Scotland, if you're in Scotland, that you can report a scam to, and they might be able to help and advise you as well.
And do you know which of these apps has Bioprotection, or which ones don't?
Yes, so Depop and eBay have Bioprotection. Facebook Marketplace doesn't. So it's always good to check what protections you have in place, because then you might want to think about using PayPal or a different protection method.
So let's say you bought a bag and you receive it and it's not the designer you think it should have been, or maybe you think it's a knockoff. What do you do? So can you complain to the app? Would they do anything?
Yeah, so the apps should have complaint processes in place, but they might vary. So do check those carefully. We did find, for example, in our research that customers of some marketplaces were generally more unhappy with the complaint resolution side of things. So, for example, Vinted had the lowest percentage of sellers happy with the complaint resolution and the second lowest percentage of buyers happy with the resolution. That might be because they only have a 2-day window in which you can raise issues. So that's a very short time period.
That is, isn't it?
And if you didn't read the terms and conditions or understand what the complaint process is, then you've got a lot of work to try and convince them to get a return or to resolve the situation.
One of the other things I think you should be really careful about is if you have items that you're selling through these sites, which are a collect from home or a direct collection purchase, which quite often they are, particularly on Facebook Marketplace, which is a huge marketplace, be very careful about the information you provide to people about the place in which you live and where you're meeting them and how you're meeting them. That's a really important thing to think about, because you're meeting somebody you don't really know. So, and you will get a lot of requests saying, where do you live? Where can I collect this item from? I think it's something that we need to be really, really careful of and be wary. But somebody you're meeting that whilst you're having a conversation online, you don't know them. So you do need to think about that.
And now to go back to the start of the show where we mentioned that HMRC, the taxman, is getting interested in how people are using these apps. Gabri, could you get a tax bill for selling, say, your second-hand clothes?
Yeah, so there is some confusion around this, so-called HMRC, side hustle tax. It's not a new tax, but what is new is that the government has put requirements on these online platforms to report and collect information around people who are making significant money. The good news is that, if you're earning £1,000 a year selling goods, then you're able to do that. But if you earn more than this, you're then into that category of you have to register as being self-employed and do one of those self-assessment tax return things, which I've never looked at.
So I take it then that, if you're just doing this on an ad hoc basis, you're probably not going to need to pay tax.
Yeah, I mean, if you're selling the odd item here and there and it's a low price, then it's really unlikely that you need to worry about it.
And we talked before about whether or not these apps are easy to use, but are they worth our time? I suppose there's a possibility that you could spend a couple of hours taking photos of your old clothes. You might need to iron them, you might need to wash them, iron them, hang them up, like clean up around, all of the context. And then you might do this and then actually nobody buys them. They could be sat on these apps for, however long. Is it worth the time?
Is the juice worth the squeeze? That's the question you're asking, isn't it? Well, I think that's a really fair question. I have to say, in my own household, there are a lot of items that remain unsold. Clearly, their pricing hasn't been quite correct. I also think there's a balance here about what's he getting out of it. So, yes, there is a bit of money to be made, but you are making a loss. Don't forget the charity shops and the charity sector who are being massively impacted by this because they're not receiving as many goods and not receiving as many good quality goods. And of course, when we're talking about tax and so on, the benefit of giving to charity shops is that if you are employed and you're a British taxpayer, you can claim gift aid, which increases the amount of money charities are making. So I think you have to balance it on your own time, whether you think it's worth it. And actually, if part of the job is to get rid of a load of stuff, take it down to the charity shop, give it to them, they'll be delighted to have it, rather than, keep stacking it up in the back bedroom. And I know for me, I end up taking it to the charity shop or to a retailer who, there's some great schemes on at the minute where, you can take 5 items back to a big retailer and they will give you a £5 voucher. So that might actually be worth more money than selling it through Vinted and having to take it to the post office.
Yeah, Catherine, I have to say that's exactly sort of the approach that I take as well. Like there are some items that, like I said, it'd be really nice to know that I've sold them to someone who's really excited about them, and I feel really fond about them. And there are some items I do take to the charity shop, and they have, at the back of the shops where they take lots of clothes because they're recycling that material. So it's just kind of making sure that you've got separate reasons for wanting to do it and not just putting everything online, because that is really time consuming. You've got lots of pictures to take. You want to accurately describe everything. You don't want to misrepresent everything. And, there is a lot of work in making sure you have the right hashtags so that it's coming up in people's searches. So you want to save that for items that you're really passionate about. And then also you've got the charity shops there. And also you can get certain organizations or collect the clothes from your house and you can recycle them that way. So there's lots of options out there if you're willing to take a bit more of a broader approach with it.
And finally then, I suppose it's been quite positive, especially from the buyer's point of view. People seem to like these apps, but as you said earlier in the show, Catherine, it's still quite a niche proportion of people actually using them. What would you say, are these marketplaces here to stay? Are they impacting, high street retailers? Will more people jump on board?
I think they are here to stay, and I think more people will use them as part of the way that they buy, particularly clothing. I think it's part of the way they buy clothing and other items too. But, between the years of 2000 and 2015, we doubled the production of clothing. So we made twice as many clothes as we did. But as individuals, we wore items 36% less. And of course, what happened in the pandemic was, we wore one pair of leggings and one top, didn't we? For about 6 months.
For weeks on end. Yeah.
Maybe a T-shirt in the summer. So I think we've got used to not to wearing less, but to having a narrower wardrobe as well. So I think there are a number of things that are changing. How many of us go to work every day? So we don't need a work wardrobe and a home wardrobe and a going out wardrobe. So I think we're taking a different view anyway of the things that we consume. But it is a small percentage because we're still buying new stuff. But I do think that we see in every statistic that the younger the consumer, the more important sustainability is. And actually, we're seeing that now across the most age groups of shoppers. And I think we all want to make the right choices. And that's why these platforms are part of that list of choices we can make. So from charity shops to platforms to, I'm going to a wedding, I'm going to go and treat myself to a new outfit. I think we're making conscious choices about lots of the decisions we make. But this platform mentality and the whole idea of it will be a big part of the future way of buying and selling.
Well, it's been a really fascinating show today. Thank you both so much for coming on. And Catherine, for our listeners, where can they find you?
They can come and find me at getsavvy.com. That's where I'll be. Look out for me on the telly, or in charity shops and selling things. That's where I'll be.
Well, thank you both for coming on the show today.
Thank you.
A huge thank you again to Gurpreet and Catherine for coming on the show today, and to you for listening to this week's episode of the Which Money podcast. If you enjoyed today's show, please do hit subscribe to make sure you catch our new episodes as soon as they drop. For daily money news and advice, you can find us on social media at Which Money and online at which.co.uk/money. And we also have a free money newsletter which is delivered to your inbox every Monday. To sign up, visit which.co.uk/money newsletter. This episode of the Which Money podcast was written by Amelia Cheer Ariano and Adrian Bradley and produced and edited by James Rowe.
Like listening to podcasts just like this one from the team at Which? Well, we've got some good news. All our podcasts are now available to listen to on YouTube and YouTube Music. So whether you like listening to Get Answers, Which Shorts or Which Money, all episodes can now be listened to directly on YouTube or through the YouTube Music app. To find them, just search for the podcast you'd like to listen to. YouTube's additional functionality also means that you can now read along with subtitles as you listen. Don't panic though, all Which podcasts are still available to listen to elsewhere too. So wherever you listen, we'll see you soon.